Hi, I'm Gavin. I'm the owner of Maple Clinics, and this is my founder's story. Yeah.
How long have you been in chiropractic, and did you always know it was going to be the business that you would run one day?
Well, how long? This is my 20th year as a
Right.
chiropractor, so that's kind of cool. That flew by.
So you
Uh,
started when you were 7?
yeah, exactly. Yeah, thank you. um, no, I'm pretty fortunate, actually. My dad's a chiropractor, and
Okay.
I grew up in a chiropractic household. Chiropractic philosophy, which is just generally the lifestyle we live, was a little bit different than some of the other kids.
Yeah, yeah.
We were raised up in a kind of natural health environment, and that long ago was a little bit different. Now, plenty of people opting for
Yep.
kind of natural approaches as much as possible. Things like organic foods and stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah.
I think I was the only one of my friends that knew what that was back then. But yeah, so I grew up. I was getting adjusted. That was always the kind of first protocol was for any time of sickness, ailments, or anything like that. We would just stick to natural remedies.
Ah,
Obviously,
okay.
medicine was there. I've had a couple bad incidents with being very sick and needed medicine to
Fascinating.
save my life. Actually, once when I was 13 years old by bacterial meningitis. But aside from that, on day to day living, yeah, we had a pretty proactive,
Mm.
healthy, natural living lifestyle. And I went to high school and in Canada, where I'm from, and I during high school, I thought about every different thing I could possibly do. I knew chiropractic was there. I knew it was a part of my life. But when you're talking to your friends and things, you think about all the different possibilities. I'm going to start a business doing this. I'm going to be a lawyer.
What was some of the
Whatever the
ideas?
well, some of them I probably can't talk about, but yeah, definitely. I thought about being a lawyer. I wanted to
Okay.
be in law. Definitely, that was one place I wanted to go. It was always ideas of entrepreneurship, starting our own business.
Mm.
We had different. We have a cottage up in the summer. You go to the lakes and we have like boats, jet skis. So we were always thinking about how we could do different types of. When you're a kid, you want to do the stuff you love all the time,
Mm.
right? And probably should have kept thinking that way for a long time. But all of those types, you look for a business in all the areas that you have fun with.
Mm.
And so that's really where kind of my inspiration was all the time. But I always came back to chiropractic. And then I
Mm.
went to university and I studied community health sciences.
Mm.
Got into ergonomics and different types of things. I got a job offer with a big brewery in Canada when I was graduating from there.
Nice.
But at that time, I kind of had already decided I'm going to go on to chiropractic
Right.
college. I just looked at my dad's life. I saw like the kind of how much the good quality of life that we had. We had him around a lot.
Was it a
He
role
was
model in a
big
sense?
time.
Like, yeah,
Yeah, he
yeah.
was my parents are my biggest inspiration. So that's why I'm
Uh,
pretty fortunate. I didn't have to look any further than my own parents for kind of my primary inspirations in my life. And for my dad, I just saw the amount like wherever you go, everyone knew him. And in town, everyone knew who he was. I see patients everywhere. He would be greeted by everybody. So it was kind of cool to see that walking through town. And I thought, I wouldn't mind a piece of that because he was able to help a lot of people. And he did a lot more outside of chiropractic to help people as well.
mm.
He taught us the old adage that you make a life from what you earn, but you you make a living from what you earn, but you
Mm.
make a life from what you give. And that's kind of followed. I can see that in my brother and my sister and myself all the way through.
Mm.
And we've kept that, even up to this age
Yeah.
now. It's been a fucking defining principle in the way we live our life.
Yeah, it's fascinating because your dad, you're definitely right. Your dad is almost like grew up in an era like ahead of his time. Um, do you know how he got into it at
Yeah.
all?
My dad he used to sell pharmaceuticals. So he used to be a salesperson
Okay.
and he was speaking to one of my grandfather's friends who was a chiropractor. And my grandfather used to play racquetball with them at the Toronto Racquetball Club all the time. And my dad had met him a few times and talked to him, got interested into it. And he said to my grandfather, his dad, that he was going to be a chiropractor. He'd like to think about that. And his dad said, "Oh, dude, they're quacks. Don't do that." So that was at that time. But he went ahead and did it anyway. He studied in Toronto. He was a supply teacher one day a week to help pay for chiropractic college while
Mhm.
he was doing it. Yeah, and he was actually was in university studying to be in business personnel, hiring, firing, and things. So a massive
Fascinating.
turn right, and he's never looked back. It's you'll ask him. I'm sure he'd tell you chiropractic's given him most of the things
Yeah.
that he values the most in life.
And he went down the route of running his own practice and
He
that sort
right
of
from
thing. Yeah.
graduation, which I did as well, which wasn't necessarily the norm here. But for my dad back then, that's what they did. You
Mhm.
graduated and you get out there and start
Yeah.
start your own practice. So he started that in the town that we grew up in Streetsville, Mississauga, which is about 25 minutes from Toronto.
Mhm.
Yeah, and we spent our life there. Went to school there, high school there, and it was a great place. Play
Yeah.
ice hockey there. And that's kind of
Holds a lot of memories then.
it definitely does, and that's where I go home to. Still, I'll be going home in a couple of weeks' time for Christmas for the first time in 16 years. I'll be home for
Yeah.
Christmas, so that's going to be nice. But that's how he got into it. And then I went to university. I was going to study in New York, not New York City, but in New York State. And then the opportunity, I went backpacking after university, and then I thought I would like to stay abroad a little bit longer. There's a chiropractic college in the south of England. My dad happened to know somebody who he could call at admissions, just because of his involvement in the
Mhm.
profession. Called to see what the likelihood was to get in. At that time, they always had spaces for international students, just because they
Brilliant.
pay full price. So,
Mhm.
so I was home for 2 weeks, packed my bags, and went back to chiropractic college. And that was 2002. That was down in Bournemouth, south of England. Graduated in 2006, and then came up to Scotland. I had visited Edinburgh a couple of times, loved it. So I thought, well, it wasn't going home right away. So we came back and we started up here with my then partner, and we started our first clinic in Cooper and Fife.
All right.
We
Okay.
couldn't afford Edinburgh at the
Yeah.
time. Actually, it was just before 2006, so prices were high. I mean,
We'd just be on the
2000
borders compared to Canada, the size of Canada anyway.
Yeah, oh, I know, exactly. Wasn't too much of a hike. Yeah, so we started, just grabbed, you couldn't, honestly, the prices of renting anything was too much at the time. We got a little small shop in Cooper and Fife, got a builder to come in and just cut a couple walls in so we can make a
Mhm.
couple rooms out of it. Within a year, we had another place in St. Andrews.
Mhm.
And then the 2008 credit crunch came and everything kind of went down, but we were still in healthcare. So the bank lent me 100% to buy a property in St.
Right.
Andrews on South Street, which is great. We still have it today. I didn't have to put a penny of my own into it, and because we were still considered safe lending in
Yeah.
healthcare. 6 months later, that wasn't the case. It was hard to borrow any money back then. But yeah, I just got good fortune that a couple people that I had met at the time had to sell a few properties, and they had one there that was ideal.
Right
So
opportunity,
yeah,
right
yeah,
time.
right, exactly what it was, right
Mhm.
time, right opportunity. So
So this is
had
when?
that.
This is 2000
That would
and
have been okay. So 2008, 9. So it would have been right after the credit crunch. So I think around 2008, months after things kind of collapsed.
Mhm.
Like Lehman Brothers down in London or the big banks. And that when that went down, we had about a 6 month window where still things were still okay for us.
Okay.
So yeah, 2008 to get that property. And then everything happened really fast. And then in 2010, um, I was, well, I'll tell you, one of my friends who was with me, who does our marketing now, he was going to come and work with us in Scotland. He graduated a couple of years after me. I was
Mhm.
2006, so that was 2008. He came up, and we were going to buy another property down in Dumfries, but unfortunately, his mom fell ill,
Oh.
so he had to go home and
Where was
look
he
after
from?
her.
Was he
Canada, we're same
Canada
place.
as
Yeah,
well?
we
Yeah.
grew up same high school and
Oh,
everything, so
right,
that's pretty
right.
cool.
Childhood friend then.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
definitely. Yeah. So he um, he had to go home, so we couldn't buy that clinic at the time. But 2 years later, 2010, that chiropractor in Dumfries, his brother was selling his clinic going back to Canada in Wishaw, which is a
Right.
place I'd never been and never heard of. But he called me on the phone and said, "Are you interested in buying my practice?" I drove over. I said, "Well, maybe," because I wanted to be somewhere closer to like Glasgow or Edinburgh.
Central, yeah. Right.
Because St. Andrews was nice, but it was off the beaten track a little bit, and there's not. Besides from work and stuff, I was kind of at that age group where there's people younger students and then people a little bit older than me, but kind of
Mhm.
my age range, there wasn't a lot. So we came down, saw the guy in his name was Darren McNaughton, really nice guy. He had the clinic in Wishaw. It was a small little shop, a little bit up from where we are now. And then I bought that from him and just started working there. Yeah, it was
Brilliant.
built it up
So that
from
became the hub. So was Maple a brand straight away, or
No.
was it just you as the
there.
chiropractor?
Just me. That was Wishaw Chiropractic. And then I have two kids who live in Norway, and they're in Oslo, Norway. So I basically fast forward a couple of years, I had that clinic, and I got it as busy as I could. I was working kind of a lot at that time, and we were renting that property. Believe it or not, back then it was only £500 a month to rent,
The dream.
and then no rates, and one staff member and myself, and I just worked all the time. And then I was in a situation where I needed to travel back and forth to Norway, so I adjusted my hours, where I would finish I would come to work on a Monday afternoon and I'd work straight through basically till Thursday night, then go to the airport again, fly to Oslo,
Mm.
be there until Monday morning, walk my kids to school, and then head to the airport again and
Yeah.
come back. And I realized like this was fine, but I realized it was going to run its course because I was getting tired. You know, I was traveling a lot of times, like 38 to 40 weekends a year.
Yeah.
Um, if not to Norway or something, then we'd all be going to Canada. And then the opportunity, oh, funny enough, I got a notice in 2015 from the bank saying that I had to leave the property because the person who we were renting from wasn't paying his bills to the bank.
Oh, no.
But by law, actually, they can't kick you out that quick. They have to give you time. But he was really nice, the guy from the bank. He said, you know, take the time you need, but
Yep.
preferably if you could leave sooner than if something comes up, then, you know, we wouldn't mind if you left. And something did come up a little bit down the street. A friend of mine kind of went in and did the bidding for me, got us a great deal on a property that had been laying dormant in Wishaw, which a lot were at the
Bro.
time.
Yeah, yeah.
And we bought that. And then a year later, we bought the one next to it for a really undercut price as well, and just started expanding it from
Mhm.
there. And that's when I started to bring in a couple people, and that's where Maple was born.
The
So
brand and stuff is
2015,
thinking,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So we came and opened it. Wisha Chiropractic became Maple Clinics, and it was the first one was there. It was branded differently at the time because I wasn't sure where we were going. And then I had brought in one, two, three, I think four chiropractors in a relatively short order. And it was all working good, really nice
Mhm.
guys and stuff. And one of them we opened, then I always had Airdrie as a place I thought would be another good clinic.
Mhm.
And we opened up in Airdrie. We, again, my same friend went and did the bidding for me to negotiate the best price possible. It was another derelict building. And so the plan became to look for empty buildings that we could get at a low price
Yeah,
and
because
then
you probably
renovate
knew the
them.
fit out and everything like that
Yeah,
at
we
this
had the
point.
plan
Yeah.
at that
Yep.
point. Yeah. Same builder's done all of ours. Um, so he knows, he kind of even knows what we're looking for
Mm.
before we do. In fact, he's come up with many of the layouts and things because it's hard to visualize it when you see these places that have been
Yeah.
run empty for a while. So yeah, it used to be a Chinese restaurant on Graham Street there. And so we totally gutted that one, renovated it. And then a little bit later, the opportunity for the shop in Motherwell came up.
Mhm.
Again, had been sitting empty and dormant for a while. Um, Made a relatively low priced offer on that. It was accepted, and that was going to be our hub for training. So we're going to have a small clinic up front, and the whole back, the extension area, was going to be for
Yeah.
training. But within a year, it was too busy, so we
The
had to turn the
demand,
whole
yeah,
thing
yeah.
into a clinic.
Mm.
And
Did you
then,
feel like you had built a brand at this point, and
no,
or people
probably not
knowing it?
really.
No.
No, I actually was just growing, and then at that point, once we had Motherwell, we had yeah. So those three were there, and we decided at that point, I just said, let's try to brand this now. I was speaking to Colin, my friend in Canada.
Mhm.
We've got websites for each of them. Everything was just a
Just
bit messy. Why don't we start
disjointed.
to put this
Mm.
together? And you know, a lot of what I did with the first clinic to get a few people working there was because I couldn't be there every day and still be involved, like see my kids as frequently as
Mhm.
I would want to, because I was traveling as much too. So that was a big reason for why I did that. And I was fortunate. A lot of good chiropractors came through to work for us. So what we did was became a place where we could bring young chiropractors in, where they could cut their teeth, learn a lot, get exposure to a lot of different types of patients,
Mhm.
get the training from a couple of the more senior chiropractors. And then, yeah, they get to enjoy the
A nice
lifestyle
hub,
up here
yeah.
as well. And then after a few years, you know, 3 or 4 years typically, they go back to wherever they want to go to and start their own clinics, and they would have all the kind of the turnkey system from
Awesome.
us to go and do that. So that
Yeah.
was kind of the what attracts some people to come work here. And now I have friends down in Cornwall. He's got his own clinic. He used to work with us. One in Dunfermline.
Mm.
So there's a couple down in the south of England as well. Or sorry, Midlands in England. So it's become a really cool network that even after the fact we had a big Christmas party last year, and a bunch of them came and joined us because they're
That
still
must
part
be
of the
cool, yeah.
team. Yeah.
Who would
Uh,
have thought then? So did you ever have like a dream for like growing up in Canada that you would think you would run this networking of chiropractic in
no,
the UK?
no, I 100% had my life planned out. I was going back to work with my dad in Canada. I was the first chiropractor. I was the middle kid. Then 2 years later, my brother said, "Hey, I'm going to go." He left what he was doing, came and joined me in England. He's a chiropractor.
Oh, is he?
And my
Right. Yeah.
youngest sibling is my sister. She's 2 years younger than me. She studied in Toronto, and then both her and my brother took over my dad's practice.
Right. Okay.
And they took my life.
Yeah. So they took
So
that part away.
yeah,
And what does your dad and what does your parents think of this? Have they?
they love it. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. My dad loves Scotland too, so he comes back.
It's a good excuse
Yeah,
then. Yeah.
yeah, definitely. My mom, it's an excuse to come see the grandkids, of course. And she doesn't particularly like hot climate holidays, so this suits her as well. But no, my dad loves it here. I mean, and he'll come over here and just
Fascinating. Yeah.
make time for himself. He'll go into the pubs and
Yeah.
just make friends with people.
And do you remember like some of those early day visions, like as things? So I guess the first question for you here, like when did you get like you must have got like a buzz from the very first time treating a patient and seeing the impact that you can make, and also a lot of that comes from seeing your dad and the
Yeah.
reputation that your dad built in the town that you were from. What was those thoughts like for you?
Yeah, well, I wanted to basically try to replicate that, wherever I was practicing. 'Cause that's the nice thing about chiropractic. Obviously, I can walk around, just get my hands, my
Mhm.
head, and I just need to buy some benches and things, and I can do that. The rest comes from me, from
Knowledge, yeah.
within. And so yeah, I tried to replicate that. Be someone that your patients is, somewhat friendly with. It's someone they can trust, build relationships with. They can look to you for health advice that they may not otherwise ask other people.
Mhm.
And I don't have the answer for everything by any means. I'm a chiropractor, and that's what I focus on most. But I'm also fairly worldly now at this stage of my life. So we build relationships that are sometimes a little bit deeper than just getting our hands and adjusting somebody.
Mhm.
And that's where the impact comes. Yeah, where you can make a difference in people's lives. But also, I like people, so actually, it's a great. Every day I get to speak to tons of different people, and there's a lot of there's
Stories.
a lot of good there's a lot of good people here, and I hear a lot of good stories, a lot of funny stories, heartwarming stories, some sad stories too. But a day doesn't go by that I'm not getting a laugh from one of my patients, or having
Mhm.
a tug on the heartstrings as
Yeah.
well. So it is a really good, um, for me, career wise. I don't think I could have asked for a better one that suits my personality,
Mm.
and I really enjoy it. But yeah, I think you said before, when did I see it as my first time I put my hands on someone to adjust? The first patient I ever had was a baby.
Oh wow.
Yeah, yeah. So she was 3 weeks old, and that was when I was doing my internship. And I was incredibly nervous because it was my first time, and not so much that it was a baby, because we had been trained quite well to deal with pediatric
Mhm.
patients, but the parents, obviously that's their child. It's a new experience for them. They're hanging over right over you, breathing down your neck, and it's a hot little clinic room down in Bournemouth. It's quite warm, and you had to
Yeah.
wear these white jackets and everything, so it was a bit stuffy. So yeah, I remember I was sweating and things, but it was a colicky baby. But the great thing was, I think it was after 2 visits, the baby went from 12 hours of crying a day, 10 or 12 hours, as the parents reported, down to like a normal 2 hours. And then
Wow.
they were a foreign family, and next thing you know, they came in on the next visit, and everybody came.
Yeah. It's
The
just that.
brothers, the sisters, the dads, and everyone, and they were thanking me for
Mhm.
that. Yeah, so that was my first taste of it, but at the same time, it was a bit surreal at the time, and also I don't know that I soaked it all in as much. Um,
Just thinking about the next thing
yeah,
and the
exactly.
next
Next step, you're
training.
thinking
Yeah.
too much about that. But as time goes on, you can really appreciate the experiences that you have along the way. And I think we talked about that earlier, just kind
Mhm.
of that old adage, with age comes wisdom. And I think you take a
Mm.
bit more time of self reflection about the things you've done in your life and the things you get to do. So yeah, that's kind of been always kept chiropractic exciting for me, and
Mhm.
introducing it to new people. And I think after Motherwell, we had this kind of idea after Motherwell opened and got busy, which we didn't expect. We expected it to be steady, but we didn't expect it just up the street from Wishaw
Mm.
to be, Wishaw would be as busy. And then this was getting busier than we had anticipated. So then we thought, okay, well, here's a good opportunity. I always say we because I bounce my ideas off my partner now, and just anyone who's in my life, my dad, people I talk to, my brother. But I
Love to
thought,
buy them.
I have a couple mentors as well. But what I thought would be great is the one thing, if I was in Canada, there's a chiropractor on every street corner. A lot of people know what a chiropractor is and what they do. Here, they don't necessarily know the difference between us and other musculoskeletal interventions that are also very valuable for people. But what is the kind of uniqueness of chiropractic? What do you do? And so the thought was, how can we make chiropractic more accessible, more available? And one of the ways would be to open more clinics.
Mhm.
And so I thought, well, we're going to open them in a fairly small area, radius from each other, because then more people will be talking about chiropractic.
Yeah.
Rather than thinking, the Motherwell one gave me the idea that, wow, actually, you could open next door to another one and still be busy because there's that much of a demand for
Yeah.
it, which is excellent. We don't
Mhm.
differ for lots of time. We never really marketed or anything.
Yeah.
But kind of come into the year 2025, we do a lot of marketing and things. We bring, because our vision now is to keep opening more clinics, but I don't really want them for myself. I only want to open up with younger chiropractors who want to open them up.
Yeah.
And we have 3 students that we're supporting or sponsoring at the Scotland Chiropractic College, which is in its 3rd year now, which is fantastic because historically most kids in Scotland would have had to go down south to study or abroad. So it's not only the cost of the education, but also the cost of being away housing and all that. Just for a lot of people, normal university expenses. But that studying can be cost prohibitive, especially when some of the education is paid for in large part here
Yeah, yeah,
in Scotland.
makes
So
sense.
it's not the case for the chiropractic college, but it's right around the corner. But I think they can go in and see, listen, when I graduate from here, there's something waiting for me. There's
Mhm.
opportunity on my doorstep here. There's
But I wonder how many people grow up and go through the experience of being interested in chiropractic but don't have it in the family history. So knowing how successful of a business it can be, but even more importantly, like probably the impact. So that gives them the chance to get hands-on experience and see, look, here's the impact that we have on people's lives.
yeah, that's a big one. The exposures, there isn't a lot of exposure, so most people don't necessarily know. And I think you're a byproduct of your surroundings, if you don't see these things. So um, now that we have more clinics, we have a lot of people come and observe students
Mhm.
that are, in high school, they want to check it out. We have university days where we go out now as a part of the chiropractic college in Scotland to let people know about a career in chiropractic. And, it's when you say success, it's kind of measured whichever way you want. But I think in terms of like the quality of life that I have as a chiropractor, not many of my friends have the same one, and if anything, that makes you feel pretty good. My dad says it'll never make you rich, but it'll give you a quality of life that very few have, and that's true.
And what does that mean to you?
Flexibility, freedom. Freedom's probably the biggest one, as I said before, to give me an opportunity so I could spend the time with my kids who live abroad. I got two kids here as well, so I'd like to be able to do all the things that I value outside of work as well. And
Mhm.
sometimes that can, certain careers don't necessarily allow that much for that. Maybe they do, but I think we get caught up sometimes just because we're chasing, maybe chasing the next buck, the next thing, or the promotion or things like that. But I dictate everything that happens in my life to a large extent.
Mm. Good place to be in. So I guess you mentioned something which is so true, like being able to grow up in a different part of the world and then coming over here. I always feel like the UK and Scotland in particular, we're always like a couple of years behind like America and Canada and this sort of thing. So when it comes to chiropractic, a lot of people may think from the social media scrolling and whatnot that it's cracking a few backs and an adjustment and a
Mm.
realignment. How do you go through like dumbing down that explanation and trying to connect with someone who doesn't necessarily know what it is and what you do?
Yeah, well, that is the challenge because a lot of people come in with kind of a preconceived idea of what chiropractic is, or just crack me back into place, or my bones out of place, do this, and it is, of course, they look kind of cool on their TikTok video, whatever the case may be,
Sounds
with the
good.
speaker. It sounds cool, some people don't like the sound, but the thing is that is probably off putting for some people as well because they hear that or they are afraid of it or scared of it. And it's important to know that there's over 100 different recognized techniques for chiropractors to
Oh,
use. So you know, I have about 5 different techniques that I use of those 100, but that allows me to change the technique I'm using on the person, so that I can adapt it. Some people don't like having their neck, as you say, cracked, but adjusted. We'll say with that audible release, the click, which is fine. We have other techniques that we can use to do that. But in order to try to explain chiropractic, a lot of it has to do with the nervous system. So we use the spine as a means to an end. Predominantly, we live our life through our nervous system, and we use the spine as a means to an end. So the brain is completely encased by bone, the spinal cord completely encased by the spinal column, so all your vertebrae. And it's only at that stage where our peripheral nerves become exposed, where they start to leave the spinal column. That's the biggest possibility for nerve root interference, entrapment. But it's not necessarily like trapped nerves as we say it. It's not like a bone pushing on the nerve, but it changes the communication between the brain and body. And we know that spinal adjustments affect the brain. So a lot of things that we do in terms of chiropractic is we're adjusting specific areas of the spine to have an impact on specific areas of the nervous system or function of the
mm,
nervous system. But the most important thing is we're trying to fix the way things are working. If you want to simplify it, when you have pain, it's often, if it's musculoskeletal or neuromusculoskeletal, it's often the result of poor function. And our job as chiropractors is to help restore the function of those particular areas that aren't working as well. And that's similar for physical therapy, osteopaths as well, sports therapists now, which are becoming more and more
mhm.
popular. But there's a different degree of specific focus. Like physiotherapy is a massive profession, and they can do stroke rehab, um, you know, say respiratory rehab, things like that. So, but musculoskeletal wise, they also approach it a little bit differently than a chiropractor would, and not better or worse, but just different. Our focus is predominantly based on the nervous system.
Mhm.
So when you see things like headaches, for instance, I read one neurologist said there's as many different causes for headaches as there are people with headaches. That can seem a little daunting if you're a headache sufferer. But we have a lot of success with headaches because when we examine someone, listen to their history, examine them, we can determine pretty quickly if it's the type of headache that they're going to have a good response with in chiropractic care.
Yeah. Interesting. So, what about like? So you mentioned something earlier, like the unconventional way to treat, uh, whether it's a pain or even just the like from a metabolic point of view and all that sort of thing. So there's a lot that can feed into the fix. What's like some of the like in everyday life? What's been like some of the solutions that it's end up solving for people? So an example like lower back pain that can be fixed with starting with the readjustment and the treatments and all the practices that you do.
Yeah. So what do you outside of what
Yeah,
I
yeah,
do? What
just
could
like
help?
yeah, yeah. Like
Well,
how does it show
movement
up
I
in
think is a big
the
one.
big
I
one?
think
Yeah,
movement and
which is the
strength.
obvious one I think
Yeah,
most people
yeah.
think of.
As
But
I think segmental motion is one of so like things like yoga, Pilates, but just general mobilization, movement techniques are massive. They're huge, and balance is also important. People kind of take that out of context sometimes. They say, "Oh, you're not restoring alignment and things," but to a certain degree, you are because if you see the pelvis elevated on one side and you make some structural changes and they
mm,
become more balanced or level, you are making that change manually. Sometimes people can do it on their own. Sometimes they don't have the ability to. What chiropractic is doing is more specifically if you have segmental motion, so specific vertebrae that aren't moving particularly well,
mm,
we're able to identify those and restore movement in those that other types of movement patterns might not be as successful with.
yeah,
But certainly with back pain, if your only focus is back pain, I can think of many different ways to manage back pain. Chiropractic is just one of them.
mhm,
So if you tried to compare chiropractic to something else when it comes to something as well as vast as back pain, you're going to have some people say, "Oh, chiropractic doesn't work, or physiotherapy doesn't work, osteopath doesn't work. Oh, I just exercised, that was great. I did yoga, or I did like the chiropractor." That is the way it's going to be because there's many different ways that people
yeah,
present with back pain, and people's treatment protocols from a hands-on perspective are varying, and some are right for some people, and some don't necessarily take it. There's some people who have definitely come to us, and it hasn't been the right answer for them. But the more people you see, the wiser you get at determining which type of patients will be able to respond to our
mm,
type of care. And so most of the time we get it right, and sometimes we don't. Sometimes after a trial period of therapy or something, it's they're not getting the response that we're hoping for, and then we can advise, listen, it's probably
refer.
someone else or something else that's the right
Mm.
answer for you.
So I guess a follow up question to that is who do Maple help? So are you predominantly just chiropractic or do you have other professions within that?
Yeah, so chiropractic is how it started. Then in 2000, I think 12, I hired geez, was it 2000? He was still there. It would have been 12 or 13, 2012 or 13. I hired a sports therapist. And that was my first interaction with a sports therapist.
Why?
Well, I think he came in looking for a job. I was kind of thinking maybe a massage therapist. And then he came in, I was, oh, this guy actually is pretty smart. He knew quite a bit.
Does chiropractors like, do you have beef with like sports therapists at this point? Like,
No,
where are
no,
you
no,
at this
no.
point? Or
I don't
like,
have a beef with anybody. I don't really like when it comes to other professions. I know there is kind of like, but I would say they represent kind of the lower level of the profession. I don't know. I can't speak on other
mm,
professions, but
mm,
certainly from chiropractic, I don't see why you would have a beef with another
yeah, like a
profession.
tongue in
Kind of it's a
cheek.
little bit childish, but they tend to be. But sports therapists, I didn't know about because it's not that common in Canada. It's more
Okay.
physical therapists.
Ah, okay.
Certainly at the time, I had no exposure to them. But now they're like my best friend. Like I think it's like one of the best things to complement chiropractic care, and every one of our clinics has sports therapists.
Mm,
Dom was the first one we hired. He's still with us today. He's a firefighter, but he works with us ad hoc on the side a bit, and he's fantastic. And he's got his loyal patient base, but he's a character as well. But I developed a really good friendship with him, but also an understanding of his capabilities as a therapist.
open up your eyes
Uh,
a little bit more of how
yeah,
the
because I
clinic
wasn't
could
really aware
evolve.
because I was
Yeah.
just so dialed in your own zone all the time,
Mm,
and you're doing your thing. And when you start to get a bit of time, you venture off and hear what other people have to say. But for a while, you're just so focused on growing, building, serving, that you don't necessarily take the time to do it. So I don't know. I'd have to ask him actually what brought him into my office because I honestly can't necessarily remember. But I remember I walked out and saw him sitting there. Yeah, and it's been a friendship that's been going on for a long time
brilliant.
since.
Yeah.
But because of him, we have sports therapists in all of our clinics and a
Mm,
lot of really good sports therapists. Some of them, a couple of them are going on to be physical therapists now. A couple of them going on to be chiropractors now as well. They've chose to continue, and some of them just obviously remaining as sports therapists. But yeah, they add a fantastic component to like soft tissue therapies um, that's over and above just a massage. Like a massage is fantastic too. Everybody loves it, but they get very specific in their soft tissue techniques. And while they don't necessarily diagnose as such, they have a pretty good idea of determining the problems um, and working with them. So I would say we're in many ways, obviously we're a chiropractic clinic, but we call it Maple Clinics because we have other services. You know, our Hamilton clinic now, sorry, has the whole body cryotherapy chamber, which was something we wanted to start. And I did that with Stuart, my business partner there and friend. And then we have shockwave therapy, focus shockwave, which I was never really into modalities, but it was introduced me from a physio who introduced me to it. And I sat down and he showed me all about it. And then I said, "Oh, we'll try one." We bought it, and it's been for shoulder complaints, Achilles, certain types of things. It has just a fantastic result on.
A different path it's ended up creating, isn't it?
Yeah, and it gets faster results for certain things than I do, which is a humbling thing, but also at the same time, it's a great thing, you know, because it gets people back to doing the stuff they want to do a lot quicker. And now I'm a patient of shockwave therapy.
Do you ever think technology will replace your profession?
Yeah, I always have that conversation because they're coming out with the robot masseuses now. And I think with AI, they are definitely becoming more empathetic as well. So will it replace it? I don't know. I mean, I certainly in the short term, I don't think anybody in my age group or probably even yours really wants to have a robot do the treatment over a person. But people being born today, it also depends how fast things continue to progress because there's a lot of variables that we don't know, but certainly looks like it's going quickly. And if it does, well, so be it. You know, I'll have clinics full of robots. So
It'll be an interesting time to see.
Yeah, it will be, and I will just take it as it comes. But you know, AI creates different jobs, new jobs, and at the end of the day, I don't know if the robots are going to run their own clinics. We'll see. But
We'll see.
I'm sure I'll be able to get another good 10 to 15 years out of this. And
No,
that's
definitely.
probably a challenge or a problem for the younger ones coming into Maple Clinic after me. The ones who are going to push me out the door and they'll take
See
over in
what's
due
happening.
course. Yeah.
Love it. So I guess like one final question to wrap up on here is where do you see Maple going, and what is your hope for Maple as a brand? I guess out with the things that make you tick, like seeing family and having that freedom, like Maple as a brand, and the solution and problem that it, or the service that it provides.
Where I want to see it go for me, I think there's, as we say, we have 3 students studying right now, chiropractic college. My daughter messaged me last week, and she's in her last year of high school and said, "Dad, I want to be a chiropractor."
How does that feel as a dad?
It's cool. It's obviously a good feeling. But at the same time, I want her to make sure that's what she wants. Because maybe she's going through a phase where she's not too sure. But she's smart. She knows who she is. She knows what she wants. But at the same time, in Canada, you've got to do a university degree before chiropractic college. Here, they graduate them a lot younger because you can go to law school, everything when you're younger. So the people come out in the profession's a lot younger. And I think if you have a little bit more life experience, this type of career is a little bit easier. You can relate to people a little bit better. Because when you're 20, you don't necessarily know what 45 feels like.
Yeah.
And that is sometimes hard to put yourself in a 45, 50, 65-year-old's body. And you communicate them, not be patronizing, because you have to understand that there are limitations for some people, whether you like it or not. So I always think a couple more years experience would be good. But yes, it does feel good, to answer your question short. And the 3 that we have studying right now, and another one in the final year, going into her final year as well, who's a friend of the clinic. I think what I would like, when you build a business, you have to think at one point, I'm not going to be here. But while I am here, I would like it to grow a little bit more. But I don't necessarily want to grow at the pace that we've grown at. And I only want to grow with people who want to grow with me. So I'm not going to take on any more clinics by myself. I'll build them like I did with Max, who's my partner in the Edinburgh clinic that we opened. We have opportunities to do a couple more clinics in Edinburgh. Right now, we have a lot of people applying and looking to come work for us, more than ever before, which in chiropractic, typically there's more jobs than there are chiropractors to fill it. So we're in a really good position right now with the amount of people. So we've obviously...
I think that says something about your brand and what you're doing though as well.
Yeah, I would agree with you. And thanks for that. But it's been the way we've changed, the way we've kind of represented ourselves more recently. And also the fact that we've had some success stories come through our system and go out and do successful themselves. And they're kind of ambassadors for us, They have their own clinics, but I always say, speak to someone who's been there if you want to. And so we have a lot coming through, and probably more than we do jobs available. So we've kind of flipped that a bit, but so we could potentially grow. But as I said, I don't want to do it by myself. Stress levels, there's a certain level I want in return if I'm going to trade stress for it.
Mhm.
But I would like the best case scenario, the ones that are coming through, just to take it over for me and push me out the door quietly one
Yeah.
day and grow maple. Maple. Obviously, you asked me where did I get the name from? I'm Canadian. I'm not very creative, so it was
As simple as that.
as simple as that. So that was Maple Clinics, but yeah, that's where I would like us to expand a little bit more of our offerings in terms of the kind of non-invasive healthcare.
Mhm.
Always open to listening to people and hearing what they have to say, but under the roofs that we currently have. And then I think you said you used to have some spinal
Yeah.
decompression coming in. So a few different things that I'd like to see happen under the existing clinics. And then in terms of clinic growth, I would want that to be only based on people who want to come in with us,
Mhm.
and then ultimately create an environment where one or multiple chiropractors can come together and take
Well,
over what we've created and make it their own and
yeah,
see wherever they want
fascinating.
to take it to.
Yeah.
The
Very
robots.
exciting to see. Is there anything that, like, if you had to say, like, maybe mission statement isn't the right word, but is there like a, when you want people to hear the word maple, do you want it to be associated with anything?
That's a good question. Probably I need to define that a little bit better because it's changed over time.
It always
Because
evolves,
Maple used
doesn't
to
it?
be me. I used to be the chiropractor, and but now I definitely don't want it to be about
Yeah.
me.
And you've got so
So
many different services that you offer. It's beyond that.
exactly,
Yeah.
we're different thing draws different people into the clinics, but I want people to think definitely it's a high quality of care, respectful practitioners that have practice with honesty and integrity,
Mhm.
and they're out there to help as much as they can. I want them to give back, most sheets of the community as we do now,
And
but
what
I'd
does
like
that
that to
look like?
continue.
Like, giving back for you? Is it like, is it to restore like movement for people? Is it to restore
Oh, I
health?
mean, over and above that, I think that's what we're expected to do. That's what we're paid to do. So I think we could do a bit more um, outreach to offer services like that for people to try at
Mm.
home before even coming to see us, or what these they can do. But I think more actually giving back to the community, like when I talk about doing like the toy drives or
Mm.
sponsoring sports teams, things that are kind of consistent with our ethos.
I like that.
I think that's important. I
Mm.
would make sure they keep doing that.
I think it's one thing
Um,
you've got in Canada that you definitely do more of. It's
yeah,
very community driven.
it is.
Like, you
Yeah,
know your neighbours and all that sorts of thing. Whereas
yeah.
I don't know if it's just the age of technology today. Like, that seems to be lost in the messaging.
Yeah, well, I think I always look back and say it's never as good as it once was, and so does the older generation. I think those are specific things that we're talking about that aren't quite as good as they once were, but there is still a lot of good things now, and a lot of good people doing a lot of great things. And so we may have lost some of the stuff that we really enjoyed and appreciated, and that
Mhm.
doesn't mean we have to let it go by fall by the wayside, but
No.
there's still a lot of good things happening, and I still think there's a lot of community spirit coming from some people, and we just want to make sure we're a part of that to
All
a
that.
certain
Yeah.
degree. You can't do everything, you can't help everyone, but we try to every year
Yeah.
do a certain
Can't
percentage
change
back.
people's minds, but you can influence it. You
Yeah,
can be at the front of it.
yeah, yeah,
Definitely.
definitely.
Cool. Right. Last question then is, with your years of experience now, is there anything you look back on that you've changed your mind, that you were very maybe opinionated on, or just how the world has evolved with technology and, I guess, as a society?
Cool. As a society, well, yeah, maybe we'll leave that
Yeah,
one a
leave that
bit.
one
But,
out.
I'll,
And the specifics of maybe some opinions that you had in chiropractic that have changed over the years.
oh, for me, for sure. Yeah, yeah, definitely. Well, like I said before, I met a sports therapist. I mean, I was staying in my lane and I did my thing, and that probably was a pinnacle for me, opening up the door to another therapist to work with. Not to say it hadn't been done or wasn't being done by other people, but I was just so kind of singularly focused on what I was doing that I didn't actually expand my thought process to think what else could be here to help the people that are under my roof already.
Mhm.
So definitely that. Um, and then from that, we've done more. We've grown more. So specifically, uh, the time there's definitely we've noticed times are changing,
Mhm.
and people are beginning to take care of themselves a little bit more. As
Good.
much as you look around and you think, okay, well, still a fairly sick culture. I'm seeing from 20 years that I've been here, the type of patient that's walking through the door now, we're starting to see people with more minor problems that are getting that fixed and saying, hey, I'm going to
More
use this as a
informed.
part to stay and look after it, which is what I would see, which would have been the case years ago in Canada. But a lot of that's, as I said, to accessibility. So that's what we need to do. But
Mm.
I think, I probably went off on your question a little bit there and didn't quite answer it specifically, but was it, you wanted to know specifically, did my
No,
opinion
just if
change? Or?
anything, like what comes to your mind is, if, because wisdom's like a thing that we all think about, and it's
Yeah.
just to see if there's anything that you're saying, like, you know what, I wish I started doing some of this a little bit sooner. I wish I
Well,
didn't have this
I wish I started
perspective.
doing all of it sooner, but I can tell you one thing for sure is when I ran my business at the start, I had a certain level of success. So I thought it's my way or the highway.
Mm,
So follow me and you'll be fine. It didn't work.
mm,
And it took me a few years to figure that out. And then when I started to do, we have this kind of principle of how when that's a 40, 40, 30, 30 principle we came up with. You get a lot of educated people. They want their own autonomy to practice, but different people attract different people into the office. So if I just wanted to replicate and say a bunch of people who would behave and act like Gavin, we're only going to start to attract the same types of people into the
yeah.
office. So definitely with you say age and wisdom, maturity, that's the biggest one. That's what allowed me to build my practice
Mm,
was to start appreciating the differences in people and the different approaches they would bring, and really respecting different personalities, and just opening up to these different people. And it's allowed us to grow at a pace that I never expected
mm.
possible, which in the first few years I made it one step. And since then you've gone 1,000 steps forward.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's been the biggest one. Just
Probably plays into the skill of the chiropractor, like within you as well, and seeing all these walks of life, and then going about the diagnosis and the treatment plan and the problem solving and all that sort of thing. So
yeah,
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 fascinating.
100%. Yeah,
Good, good.
definitely.